Good evening and hello. Welcome to another episode of the Double A Team live stream edition. I'm your host, Stephen Negishi, and I am joined once again my co-host, the associate editor of the sports media blog Awful Announcing. Ken Fang is joining me once again. Ken, good evening, and how are you today?
Good. How are you, Stephen? Good to be on with you. Good to see everybody, and happy to have you join us here on a Monday night.
Absolutely, and our show tonight is going to be very much dominant of yesterday's AFC and the NFC Championship review, and also look ahead to Super Bowl LVIII in Las Vegas this year as well. So let's start with the AFC Championship review from yesterday. Ken, the Kansas City Chiefs completely dominated the Baltimore Ravens. And I have to say that I was completely shocked just by how dominant the Chiefs looked on the road yesterday. And, I got to say, people were kind of worried about how the Chiefs will deal with playing on the road for the very first time with Patrick Mahomes, because they've always had the top seed basically for the last 4 or 5 years. But I think that they answered basically pretty much whatever the critics had with regards to the Kansas City Chiefs, who struggled throughout the season, mostly due to, bad offense. They didn't have any reliable wide receivers catch the ball. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had so many drops this past year. Sky Moore, who was one of their high draft picks 2 years ago, kind of became an afterthought. Kadarius Toney,
He didn't play yesterday.
I know, and I was going to say, who was a Super Bowl hero last year. He didn't play at all, and he went on Instagram to go on a wild rant about being benched, being a healthy scratch. I think he may have played his final game with the Chiefs. But in spite of all of this, Ken, I have to say the MVP of yesterday's game was not Patrick Mahomes. The numbers certainly look kind of very, very pedestrian compared to the what we are used to seeing from Patrick Mahomes of the past years. But I think it has to be the defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah, I mean, great job by the Kansas City Chiefs. This is not your usual Kansas City Chiefs team in which Patrick Mahomes would throw for 300, 350 yards and get the job done. Instead, what we saw yesterday was Mahomes did start off quite hot. I think he completed his first 11 to 12 passes, including a touchdown pass to Travis Kelce. And interestingly enough, you mentioned the drops earlier this season by the Chiefs receivers. They are not dropping passes in the playoffs. It gets to the point. It gets to the point where, when the games matter, your clutch players are going to be clutch. And we saw that with MVS yesterday and Travis Kelce, who has also had his share of drops. I have to agree that the defense stood up and stepped up really hard. A couple of chances for the Ravens to score yesterday, and instead turnovers happened. An interception that really should not have been thrown. Lamar Jackson, again, the questions are going to come up with him. Can he win the big games? He is going to be the MVP of the NFL this season. However, he just had a very bad game in the AFC Championship game. Granted, players have, they come up with stinkers every once in a while, but in the big games, that's not the place to do it. Lamar had a bad game. In addition, Zay Flowers did not have a very good game either. He got a taunting penalty, and then he also, after the player that he taunted actually poked the ball out when he was trying to score. It looked like the Ravens were going to come up to get the game a little bit closer, but the ball was poked out right before Zay Flowers tried to extend the ball into the end zone. He fumbled the ball, and the Kansas City Chiefs recovered it in the end zone, and that was basically it for him. Zay Flowers, a good player, a great rookie. He's going to have a good impact, but yesterday he also chose a bad time to have a bad game. So the Ravens just did not play well altogether. They were looking forward to having their very first championship game at home, and instead played like a team that was scared instead of like the Kansas City Chiefs, who are proven winners. And everyone was doubting if they could play on the road. Well, they definitely scuttled any doubts yesterday, Stephen.
Absolutely. I think, again, yesterday's game, Steve Spagnuolo called a great defense yesterday. And, it's kind of hard to think that the Chiefs defense was actually the one that carried when the offense was struggling. And one other thing is, of course, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. You summed it up very well. They self-destructed at crucial moments. Roquan Smith was given a 15-yard penalty on 1st and 5. That was not exactly that looked like it was an intentional encroachment that was given a 15-yard penalty. Travis Jones clotheslined Patrick Mahomes, and that was also, a 15-yard penalty. And then Zay Flowers, stood up and taunted a Chiefs defender after a catch. That was not a good look as well. And then, just a bad look, especially for Zay Flowers, losing the ball at the goal line, getting peanut punched. Chiefs recovered in the end zone for touchback, and then slamming the helmet, punching his hand, and getting lacerations on his hands and getting cut and all that kind of stuff. It was just basically not a good afternoon for Baltimore Ravens overall. OC Todd Monken, who called a great offense and throughout the entire season, rushed the ball only 8 times. This is just an abomination by the Chiefs offense. The Baltimore Ravens. They didn't run the ball well. Even with Lamar, they just basically let him stood and just try and beat him with the arms, which wasn't exactly working. And Monken somehow, unfortunately, could not adjust in the second half when they were trailing basically the entire ball game. If you look at the Baltimore Ravens, they were pretty much in control the entire season. I don't remember them being trailing that much in any of the games this year, maybe a couple of games, but they were so good with Lamar in charge. Again, they were completely able to overcome those things. But with a championship, this is a different animal. And the pressure was certainly on the Ravens. And, this was probably one of the best teams the Ravens have had in a long time. And unfortunately, they self-destructed badly. And now we're going to be hearing so much stories about, Lamar being a running back guy, throwing, maybe he's not a good passer, etc. Lamar, still is going to be the MVP, but there's going to be, unfortunately, an asterisk that comes with his performance after, the way he played in the AFC championships yesterday, Ken.
Yeah, he's got to win an AFC championship game and a Super Bowl to allay any of those doubts that have definitely come up. It came up, it's been there. He was an MVP back in 2019, and of course, the Ravens haven't gone to a Super Bowl with him there. That's the big question, and there's going to be questions about Lamar until he gets the job done. Everyone was thinking that this was going to be their year, especially after they beat the San Francisco 49ers in that Monday night game. A very, very impressive win, by the way, by the Baltimore Ravens. They went into San Francisco. Everyone was saying, well, can they beat a big team? Yeah, well, they did. They actually did managed to allay some fears and some doubts during the regular season, and he played extremely well against Houston in the divisional round. But
Yep.
again, when you're going to come up with a stinker, the championship game is not the day to do that. And it really hurt, and it really played into that narrative that Lamar Jackson can't win a big game. It's unfortunate. It happens. As a guy who went into the season and before the season wasn't signed, wasn't traded. Everyone was thought that what's going to go on with him. He finally signed that big contract, and it looked like he was coming out on fire. He did a great job. He played so well during the regular season, Stephen, but unfortunately, again, he didn't use his legs like he should have. The best play that he had was his deflected pass that he caught himself and ran for 15 yards. And it just goes to show that, and a couple of times that when he did run, the Chiefs had no answer for it. They had difficulty in tackling him, but that was too few and far between, Stephen. And when you have Rex Ryan coming out today and criticizing your offensive coordinator like he did, that's not a good sign. When Rex Ryan can point out something about your team and didn't get the job done, that there was a big failing there, Stephen. And the things that made the Ravens so difficult to defend in the regular season, they didn't come out, and we didn't see that at all on Sunday. And we're ready for it, and the Chiefs pretty much made the I have to give credit to Matt Nagy. I know you're not a big fan of Matt Nagy, but he came out and they came out and punched the Baltimore Ravens in the mouth in the first half, and the Ravens had no answer for it, and they never came back, and they never had an answer. And I give credit to Matt Nagy for an offensive plan that worked in the first half.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, hard to believe that all of a sudden the Chiefs receivers are, catching balls and, in the postseason when they couldn't catch to save their own lives during regular season. It was just horrendous. They struggled to, close out the regular season. They had uncharacteristic losses throughout the year, against their own division. And also, they started loss against the Detroit Lions to open the season at home, if you all remember. But, you can never underestimate the heart of a champion. I believe somebody quoted, that one. And, the Chiefs know how to win. They've answered all the questions about playing on the road. They beat Josh Allen the week before. They beat the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Those are two outstanding top 5 quarterbacks in the league. So, at least Patrick Mahomes answered any of the questions. Certainly going into the Super Bowl, I think they have all the momentum in the world entering this contest. So, certainly I know the Vegas says the 49ers. We will get to that shortly on the NFC side, but it will be very, very interesting to see, the momentum. How much of a momentum can the Chiefs carry into Super Bowl? In a stadium that they're very familiar with, playing the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's not some place that they're not really familiar with, and they get to use the Raiders facility. So yes, so that's a kind of a big irony there. But it would be interesting to see how the Chiefs can keep their momentum going when the regular season was just a complete just a disaster. Especially on the offensive side. All right. Yeah. So the big question, certainly going in for the the Chiefs, as I live here in the Kansas City area, and certainly some of the people on Twitter took this question: if the Andy Reid retire after the Super Bowl, and that is somewhat contingent upon if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, if he wins it again. So. Yeah. I know that the idea of Andy Reid retiring may not sit well with the Chiefs fans, and that's something that they don't want to entertain that notion. because that means that Matt Nagy would likely to be the successor to
Well, there's talk.
Andy Reid.
Well, there's talk that Steve Spagnuolo would take over, and I think that would be a little bit better for that would
I
be.
would think so. Yes.
Yeah, but whatever happens, Stephen, the whole question is that would Andy Reid retire after this year's Super Bowl if he wins? Now, if that happens, he would have 3 Super Bowls within a succession of 4 years. He would have nothing less to prove unless he wanted to do something like a Bill Belichick and then win another one the following year. And I would think that they would be favored again if they managed to pull this off and win 2 in a row and 3 out of the last 4. It's possible, Stephen. I don't know. Andy Reid looks like he's enjoying himself. He looks like he's really having fun out there. This is an Andy Reid that looked totally. This is a different Andy Reid that was known in Philadelphia, who didn't say anything, uptight, never said anything to the media. I mean, here he is in Kansas City. He's doing commercials with Pat Mahomes. He's doing his commercials. He's having fun out there. Yesterday, he and Taylor Swift pointed at each other after the game. They exchanged pleasantries. I mean, this is an Andy Reid that Philadelphia Eagles fans in 2003 would not recognize if they ever took the side to say, "Oh, let me go into the future and look at Andy Reid and what he's done." I mean, here's a guy, Stephen, that has really come into his own. He was fired. He left Philadelphia after not getting them to the NFC Championship. Never could get over the hump. There were after he was defeated by the New England Patriots, those same questions came up again in the AFC Championship with a young Patrick Mahomes. But now here he is. After the New England Patriots, the Kansas City Chiefs are kind of like the dynasty in the NFL. So there's talk that if Andy Reid is able to pull off defeating the San Francisco 49ers, and it would be a second time in 4 years. Of course, they defeated them in the Super Bowl. I think it was 53 or 54. It was 54.
4 years ago.
Yep, that was a great Super Bowl too. And as a matter of fact, San Francisco was up by 10 points, and then Mahomes came back, and that was their first Super Bowl. I have to say that if he does win, Reid doesn't have anything left to prove, and he could definitely call his own shot to retire. No one really, but the whole thing is, Al Michaels says nobody really knows until it really happens. But it's a story that's going to be talked about for the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to drive some of the talk or up until the game starts. Of course, along with will Taylor Swift come over from Japan? Will Travis Kelce retire after this one? Is Patrick Mahomes is he the GOAT is he the new GOAT over Tom Brady? I mean, there's all these really silly storylines that are coming up, and this is one I think that you and I could at least talk about ourselves, because this is one I think you and I can tackle pretty well.
Yeah, and I think that this is going to be somewhat of a distraction that the Chiefs have to endure. You have obviously you mentioned Taylor Swift flying all the way from Japan, in her last concert in Japan, flying, maybe about 13 hours to get to the Vegas. Now that she can certainly pull it off, and she can get there on time. She should probably get a few hours of sleep on her private jet, or maybe a few hours of sleep once she checks into the hotel in Vegas, and freshen it up and ready to go. So that's going to be a storyline, but this is going to be the biggest storyline. That something that Andy Reid will no doubt be hearing about it from, media members here in the United States and around the world, and something that Andy will have to probably do a good job of dancing it around, making sure that it doesn't, become like a massive story that consumes the entire team in the locker room. Maybe it could perhaps galvanize the team. Maybe Andy secretly tells the team that he's going to retire after this year. And then maybe it could bring the team in, further galvanize the Chiefs. or maybe it becomes such a big storyline and that the players suddenly start to wilt under pressure that they want to win one for Andy, but they kind of lose their focus and then just basically just kind of make too many mistakes for the 49ers to capitalize. It's going to be a very interesting storyline for the Chiefs entering the Super Bowl, Ken. So now let's look at the NFC timeline. Obviously, the storyline is the Detroit Lions jumped out to an incredible start, 14-0. They had a 24-7 lead at halftime, and at that point, I think a lot of us thought, okay, Detroit is going to win this game. And you picked the Lions to win in our last live stream, Ken, and you certainly look like a very smart, prognosticator in that one. But then that's why you play the game 60 minutes. And in the second half, it was just a completely a different story in this one. The Lions won, the 49ers came back to win 34-31, I believe. The Lions scored the last touchdown with less than a minute, and they failed the onside kick. But the game was pretty much already in the bag in the second half, Ken. But give me your thoughts on the Lions blowing this lead and Dan Campbell's a costly gamble on the fourth downs and stuff like that. What do you make of all of that yesterday's game?
Yeah, I mean, Detroit was like doing what I thought they were going to do. They were going to punch San Francisco in the mouth. Their offensive line, I said last week, could manhandle San Francisco, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were running extremely well. They had a great offensive plan. They basically had 4 plays on the very first drive and got a 7-0 lead. And their defense was playing extremely well also. And they got a 24-7 lead. Then in the second half, Detroit just fell apart. As you mentioned, Dan Campbell had a couple of decisions that cost him. The fourth downs. Now we can argue this till we're blue in the face. The analytics will tell you that it's always good to go with it on fourth down, and I'll agree with that for the most part. But you also want points too. You also need to stem the tide, and if you at least kick a field goal there, and especially after San Francisco kicked their field goal to get it down to 14 points, you kick a field goal. You would at least make that lead back to 17 points again. Now, granted, Detroit's kicker there's no given there. We know that. Detroit's, and you're kicking outdoors as well in San Francisco. It's not an easy place to kick, Santa Clara. But I'm going to have to say that at least, and I know Dan Campbell believes in going for fourth downs. And he was 51% successful in going on it for fourth down. We saw it also against the Dallas Cowboys in that Saturday night game in which they lost. He lives by going on the fourth down, and he dies by going on the fourth down. And I agree with your banner, Steven. He's not going to change. He is who he is. He's not going to go for. He didn't have a kicker that he depended on, so he just decided to go for it. Some of the decisions, especially passing, going for their fourth receiver instead of their top receivers, that didn't help him at all either. You're also running. You're doing great on running, and you had a fumble that cost you, and then goes back, and then you had an interception that bounces off a helmet that is caught by Ayuk. It's one of those, things like that. Detroit fans are going to say, we're snake bit, and they're going to point to that. This is going to hurt the Lions. I really did think they could win this game, and they chose. And in 30 minutes, it looked like they did. They were going to win that game, but you got to play a complete game, Steven, and that hurt Green Bay against San Francisco the week before, and it's going to hurt Detroit the following. It hurt Detroit the following week. There's definitely going to be some soul searching in Detroit because I thought this was their time to go to the Super Bowl. They really showed me some mental toughness. They showed me with Jared Goff that he could play. But again, he did not play a good game either, Steven. He was off too. I mean, Jared Goff has gone to the Super Bowl, but there was a reason why the Rams traded him, because in big games they didn't think that he could perform well. And we saw that in the NFC Championship yesterday. Give credit to San Francisco, Steven, and give credit to Kyle Shanahan. He has shown in 2 games, and he could actually come back. He came back after a 5-point deficit against Green Bay, and over an 8+ point deficit on Sunday. So he has shown that he has that he has the wherewithal to coach a team to come back. I said last week that Kyle Shanahan will never win the Super Bowl. I'm going to amend that. I think he can. So this is a team that has the tools to win a Super Bowl. And you've got Brock Purdy, who played extremely well in that comeback. He has played well in 2 particular comebacks after getting off to slow starts. The defense and Joey Bosa can actually stepped up as well. And when the 49ers decided to actually find George Kittle after not finding him in the first half, the offense got into gear, and that's what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday it was just a completely heartbreaking loss for the Lions. It was just a shocking display of just a complete meltdown of epic proportion, and it was just so sad. I'm going to try and upload a clip of the Lions' 4th down failures from Jackson Kruger Sports. I believe this is the first one that happened on the 3rd. I'm going to make it a full screen here.
Yeah.
Is in the league, and I'm a huge fan of his 4th down decision making typically, but I gotta be honest, me. I mean, people who know this channel might be sitting here saying, okay, we know you're going to defend the 4th down decision, go for it, because that's what you always do. And you see analytics say 4th down, it makes sense to go for it. Analytics do say this. I mean, the logic is kind of relatively simple that yes, you have a higher likelihood of making a 3-score game if you kick the field goal, but there's still so much time left, 22 minutes left, that, are you still paying attention to scores here? Probably should be still paying attention to putting up the most points possible, right? I got to say, I think I would have kicked the field goal here. Instead, you see that they go for it. In fairness to Campbell, I mean, the play basically worked. It was just a drop pass there, so they got a player open. I mean, it's hard to be too upset about it if you're a Lions fan, because it did basically work, just the players didn't execute, which is kind of the case every time you make a 4th down decision that doesn't work. But still, I don't know. I think I would have maybe rather taken the points there, which again, not usually what I say. Usually I say go with the analytics. You could argue either side, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. Of course, as always, thanks for watching.
So this first one that Josh Reynolds dropped was the probably the start of the the Lions kind of started to falter. I thought that was actually something that the Lions. This is I thought it was a good call. But then the Lions, Josh Reynolds dropped that ball, and then that's when things kind of started to maybe
it was a spiral.
Right, that was it. Okay,
that was a spiral. That was downward spiral. I agree there. I think I would have kicked the field goal, because right before then, the Niners had kicked the field goal to bring it down to 14 points. You kick a field goal there, you bring it back to 17, Steven. And again, the execution just wasn't there. Your man dropped it there, but still, I would have taken the points. And in one of those 4th down situations, I at least would have taken the points, Steven. Granted, like we said, the kicker is not automatic, but still, you get points there. You're back up to 17. You're back up to a 3-score game. you've got a chance, and if who knows, San Francisco maybe doesn't come back, and at least they took over from right at the point, and then just started to go, and they got the momentum, and it was all down. It was all downhill for the Lions from there. Of course, it's always easy to look back with 2020 hindsight, but I was thinking at that point, you got to take some points there. You got to get points, because if you stem the tide, kick a field goal there, maybe you kick the ball deep on the kickoff. San Francisco gets the ball on the 25-yard line, and then after that, maybe you stop them on defense there, Steven. Go ahead and play that next video.
Okay.
Well, if you're thinking, wait, I already watched this video. No, this happened again. So here's the situation now.
Yeah,
There's
go full screen.
7.5 minutes left. It's actually a 3-point game. The Lions are trailing at this point, 4th down and 3. And Dan Campbell doing what Dan Campbell does. Says, you know what? Analytics say go for it. He is an analytics guy. You might not think it by looking at him, but he believes in going for it and playing aggressive. If you look at the numbers, they do say to go for it. Again, not massively so. It doesn't say like, yes, you absolutely have to go for it, but it is in the go for it camp. So Dan Campbell, again, that's what he's going to do. I'll go over here to the, the broadcast showed to all 22. So let's show that. Why don't we? Gives us a better view of exactly what we're looking at here. But when this play begins, and one thing I just want to point out, because again, we can talk about the decision itself and all of that, but you look at the Lions players, nobody is open. I mean, this is not a bad concept whatsoever by Detroit, but just this is good defense by San Francisco. Sometimes you have to just tip your cap to the defense and say, you know what? I mean, sure, play, go for it, don't go for it, all that stuff. Sometimes the defense just makes the play. Goff eventually tries to find something, but it wasn't happening at that point. It was hoping that his receiver could read the play and make a move. Did not happen, and because of that, the Lions not able to convert there. So definitely a tough situation there for Detroit, but great job by San Francisco. Whether you think it's the right call or the wrong call on 4th down, the defense still has to make a play, and the defense did there.
So yeah, those two are, something that really, really stood out. And again, Dan Campbell lived and died by his decisions, and that's what made the Lions who they are this year. And this is why they were able to get this far. So, it's hard to blame, everything on Dan Campbell in this game. So, yeah, but, moving forward, I'm very curious. Dan Campbell said it, earlier today, this may have been their only shot. Next year is going to get more difficult. Mm-hmm. Obviously he doesn't believe in that. Obviously he won't admit it, but Dan Campbell makes a great point about, getting back there is going to be very, very difficult because of the, the free agencies and, the players moving around. It's going to be very, very difficult. They do have the key pieces in place. They got Aiden Hutchinson. They have Penei Sewell. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Right.
They have Jahmyr Gibbs, who was widely criticized for that pick at 12 in last year's draft, but he looks like a decent, player who can make a more splash plays moving forward. Jameson Williams, after a horrendous rookie year, and then getting suspended the first probably 5-6 games, I believe, due to a gambling allegations, really had a great, game yesterday. I think he certainly, if he can keep his head straight, I think he can definitely be a legitimate playmaker for the Lions.
Right.
So they have key pieces in place, and they've been talking about extending Jared Goff. I think certainly there's a bit of a discrepancy between what the rest of the league thinks of Jared Goff versus how much the Lions organization and probably the fans there love Jared Goff. So it would be very interesting to see what they do. I think Jared Goff is a slight above average quarterback. Certainly fits the system that the Lions are going to run very, very well. The Lions certainly will face a very challenging offseason. As I mentioned, free agency. I don't know on top of my head who is the the key free agents that they have, but the biggest one could be that OC Ben Johnson is still likely to be interviewing for both Seattle and Washington job. I know Adam Schefter said that the fact that one way or the other, both jobs that are still available, he's willing to bet that neither candidates are not exactly going or connected that strongly. So I'm very curious to see if Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson will likely get the job at one of the positions. Along with George McDonald, I believe, the DC of Baltimore Ravens. Certainly, with both teams losing, it opens up the Mike McDonald. My apologies, not George McDonald, but Mike McDonald. Two very good, strong candidates still remaining for the job. I do strongly believe that either McDonald or Johnson will get one of the each jobs. That's how I see it. I think Johnson might ended up getting the Washington job, because I know Washington needs to draft a quarterback and develop the quarterback, and probably might be more suited to do so with his work with Jared Goff the last year and a half or so.
Right.
So that's how I see it. So if they ended up losing Ben Johnson, who's going to be the OC? Do they have somebody internally that they can promote and keep it going? We saw the problems with a lot of defensive coaches who are head coaches, and once they lose a competent OC, the things start to crumble. As a Bears fan, I've seen way too many of that. Maybe the OCs just weren't competent to begin with anyway. But probably the good recent example is Dan Quinn with the Falcons, if you remember, with Kyle Shanahan, ironically. And, the 28-3 lead and then the whole blown and thing, and we all know that. But, from there, once Kyle Shanahan left the Falcons, the Falcons never recovered. And, they're still kind of, in that mode right now where, they've hired Raheem Morris, but, they're just, trying to recreate that magic once again. Another defensive coordinator, and then hiring an offensive coordinator to kind of spark that organization as well. So it'll be very, very interesting to see, where the Lions go from here. If the losing a 17-point lead hangover is going to carry over into the entire offseason and into next year. Certainly with the Lions winning the division, the schedule is going to get much more tougher. Obviously, they're not a pushover, or they're not a laughing stock anymore. So, the targets are going to be on their back, not just within the division, but also, within the NFC as well. So very curious to see how the Lions spend this offseason, and if they can still maintain being a legitimate contender.
Yeah, and the thing is that the NFC North is going to be tougher. Chicago should be. I do suspect if Chicago drafts Caleb Williams, I have a feeling they're going to be a much better team, Steven. Granted, I know you're not a big fan of Matt Eberflus, but it looks like he's going to stay. But if he has a better quarterback and he gets a very good offensive system going, I have a feeling Chicago is going to be a much better team than they showed. And also, Chicago was on an upswing at the end of the season, so there's some hope there. Green Bay and Detroit, I'm sure, is going to be vying for the top of the division, and Minnesota has to improve too. They got to figure out their quarterback situation as well. Whether Kirk Cousins comes back or they decide to go with another quarterback, we'll have to wait and see. But that NFC North division, Steven, is going to be really tough and packed, and it's going to be probably one of the better divisions in the league in 2024. So, yeah, you're right. Detroit, they snuck up on a lot of people this season. They're not going to do that next season. They're going to have a target on their backs. That traditional Thanksgiving game which used to be a laughing stock, is not going to be that anymore. It's going to be a very highly rated game at 12:30 in the afternoon on Thanksgiving. They're going to get a very good opponent to play them. They'll probably get a glamour opponent. CBS is going to have that game next season, Steven. Also, in addition, I would expect Detroit to get either the Sunday night game to open the season, or they get the 4:25 slot on Fox. I don't think they're going to open the season again. That's probably not going to happen. The NFL is not going to have them open be the season opener 2 years in a row against the defending champion. But I will say that they would get maybe an opening day, the opening Sunday night slot to open the season, or at least at 4:25 on Fox. So Detroit, expect to see them a lot in national games next season. Expect them, as you mentioned, to have a target on their back, and expect the Detroit Lions to be a team that's going to be pretty much in the upper echelon of the NFL, at least for the next couple of seasons.
Absolutely. I'm very curious to see how the NFC North is going to shape up. The Bears, I hope they don't finish last again. I think this offseason, they really have to ramp up, their talent. They still have a lot of holes on their rosters. Will they give up a first overall pick and get more picks for next year and build the team like the Lions have? Or will they just draft Caleb Williams, the so-called, generational quarterback, and, like Mahomes, and just basically let him rip? And then hopefully he turns into a quarterback that is as good as, Mahomes or anybody in that class. It's going to be very interesting. So, the Lions, hopefully, they will remain competitive. The last time Lions went to the NFC Championship was back in January of '92, where they got their butts kicked by the Washington Redskins back then. That was known. And then from there, they just completely, haven't been the same. And they've been trying to, they've been trying to get back into that, the upper echelon of the NFL. And I think they finally, reached that level. Can they finally get over the hump? We'll see. This is going to be interesting offseason for the Lions. So let's kind of delve into, other tidbits from that game. The Fox, certainly had a banner game. I'm going to pull up this one first. Average 56.7, so almost 57 viewers for the NFC Championship. I think it was, a rather refreshing game featuring the Lions, who have, we saw a lot of them travel very well throughout the year. We saw a lot of the Lions fans in the stand, as well as is, rapper Eminem also giving the finger salute to the 49ers fans, yesterday's game as well. And, the Fox certainly had a great, game as they close out the 2023 NFL season. And then the interesting fact is, Greg Olsen, the number one color commentator with Kevin Burkhardt, what's his future now that Tom Brady is expected to, be paired with Burkhardt in the 2024 season? I kind of feel bad for, Olsen, because I think Olsen has really, really grown into his role.
Great job.
Yeah, and I think he was widely praised for his commentary yesterday versus the combobulation of Jim Nantz and Tony Romo over there at CVS. And it's going to be very, very interesting with Fox. They've moved on from Joe Buck and Troy Aikman now over at ESPN Monday Night Football. And if they demote somebody like Greg Olsen, who is widely lauded and widely respected, and if Tom Brady is as good, or maybe even if it's half as good as Greg Olsen, maybe I think Fox Sports executives and head honchos might feel a little more relieved and can breathe a sigh of relief. But the pressure is going to be on Fox Sports and Tom Brady. Certainly, Tom Brady can basically do nothing and basically live off of his championships and his glory for the rest of his life. Or hell, if he misses playing football, next year he might, make a return, a comeback at 47. Yeah. Who knows?
He wanted to last season, Steven. He said he was going to come back, and then he realized that there was a retirement party. So he said he better go to that retirement party and not unretire. I have to say, living here in New England, I heard Tom Brady a lot during his weekly spots on WEEI. Yeah. And there would be like Monday afternoons or Friday afternoons or on WEEI. And he said absolutely nothing. He didn't show any personality. He didn't say much. He didn't show a sense of humor. Now he does this podcast every week with Jim Gray, and
Right.
again, he doesn't really say anything. As far as Greg Olsen is concerned, he really is sitting pretty. I know that Fox can demote him to the number 2 team. That is Joe Davis and Daryl Johnston for this season. I think that if that happens, he would team with Joe Davis. However, I don't think he would get a playoff game. So that's one thing we've grown accustomed to is Greg Olsen, since his great performance in the Super Bowl in last season, did an absolutely fantastic job. And yesterday talked about situational football in a way and explained it in such a great manner that it was a joy to listen to. If I'm NBC, Steven, I make a play for Greg Olsen next season. I would say, hey, look, we'll put you in the studio for the temporarily. We'll give you, if they get games on Peacock, if they get multiple games, give him a chance to be in the game announcer there, and also call a playoff game if Peacock gets a playoff game again in the wild card weekend. That's going to do again. That there's going to be a streaming game. I can tell you that right now. Either Amazon or Peacock will get it. If I'm NBC, I make a play for Greg Olsen. I say, hey, look, here's a chance for you to be in a number 1 booth. They can either put him in the studio with Football Night in America, or they can just say, hey, we'll make a 3-man booth with you and Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth. And when Collinsworth's contract is over, we will make you the number 1 guy. Collinsworth's contract ends in a couple of seasons, by the way. And I know that he's enjoying calling games, and I know he does a great job doing it. But if you have a chance to get Greg Olsen, Steven, why not get him? So I think
Absolutely.
yeah. And he still is a number 1 analyst, and NBC gets the Super Bowl in the 24-25 season.
Right.
So why not sign him and have him sign him there? And then you have a number 1 booth in Tirico and Olsen for the next 10 years after Collinsworth goes. So that's what I would do if I'm NBC. I make a play for him right now. I just say, hey, look, Greg, you're going to go from $10 million to $3 million. We'll give you a bump up in salary, give you the number 1 slot along with Chris Collinsworth, make you a 3-man booth. And when Collinsworth's contract is up, or if he wants to continue, he can stay there. But at least you know that you're going to be in the booth with Tirico going forward. And I think if you make them the offer that you can't refuse, and you make Fox look bad by bringing in Tom Brady, who is right now an unknown factor, Steven.
Absolutely. I think NBC can do a lot better than Jason Garrett or even Chris Collinsworth, with all due respect. I think bringing in somebody like Olsen could maybe energize the NBC booth. Chris Collinsworth, I think it might be a little bit more difficult because he does have a stake in the PFF. With Mike Florio. So there will be a bit of a delicate, power struggle involving Collinsworth. I know Collinsworth is getting up there in age, but maybe not as old as, say, Al Michaels.
No,
but,
not that.
No, he's not that old, but he's in his 60s.
Right.
So, will the NBC decide to part ways and bringing in somebody younger? Ageism, unfortunately, is a big problem in this country. No matter what the industry is. So, it's going to be very, very interesting if Olsen is going to settle for being in the number 2 role and give way for Tom Brady, or if he decides that he wants to jump and be the number 1 guy that he is proven that he's capable of. So this is going to be a very interesting offseason for Greg Olsen as well. So others, the Super Bowl headline that's going to be, can Brock Purdy keep up with Patrick Mahomes? And, I think we know Brock Purdy has been, called a lot of things. And most of the common theme is that Brock Purdy is a so-called a game manager. And Patrick Mahomes is a man who is generational. And going up against a guy like Patrick Mahomes might be maybe not a serious mismatch, but obviously the quarterback matchup is going to be in huge favor of Kansas City. We saw that with 4 years ago with Jimmy Garoppolo with the 49ers. And now, granted that the 49ers had a lead well into the fourth quarter before they blew that game. So I'm very, very curious to see what your thoughts on Brock Purdy's performance. And do you agree with the notion that, he is a game manager or he's a systematic quarterback?
Well, I'm going to say this. I think he's proven that he's an elite quarterback with the two comebacks that he made over the last 2 weeks in the divisional round, Stephen, against Green Bay and Detroit. Game manager, I don't think it shouldn't really be this. It shouldn't be a bad label. I don't think it's something. I mean, a quarterback has to manage a game. It has to manage, and it has to be someone who makes decisions, and that's what a game manager does. I think Tom Brady was up until he was firing darts left and right and became known as a great passer. He was a game manager too, and he won 2 Super Bowls while doing it. And then before he started getting offensive weapons and being known as a great pocket passer. I will say this: if Purdy wins the Super Bowl, it elevates him into an elite area, and that no one and when you win the Super Bowl, no one can take that away from you. I mean, some of the worst, even like someone like a Joe Flacco who has won a Super Bowl, dude, he was known as a game manager, and there was questions whether he was elite or not. When you win the Super Bowl, you are elite. I mean, there are great quarterbacks that have never won a Super Bowl, Stephen. You go back to Dan Marino. You go back to players like that. Brett Favre has won one. But would you call him? I would say that Purdy is an elite quarterback. He has shown that he's a guy that, and yes, he was Mr. Irrelevant, and yes, he was the last draft pick, and yes, people didn't. He was an unknown entity in the season beforehand, but I think he's shown that he's an excellent quarterback. He's got the locker room. His players love him. His offensive line is willing to block for him. So, and then let's say he pulls off the win. Let's say he pulls off that win. I think that all these questions and labels and everything go away because he's going to have won a Super Bowl, and he's young. And a guy who has a great future, especially as San Francisco is showing, along with they're on an upward trajectory as well. Their window is not closing. Even if they lose, I don't think their window's closing. Unlike Buffalo, which is kind of close right now, I would say the 49ers are a team which have a great chance to win not just one, but maybe 2 or 3 Super Bowls in this cycle that they have with the personnel that they have, as long as they can stay healthy. So I think now, can he keep up with Patrick Mahomes? I don't want to bet against Mahomes, to be honest with you. Mahomes is a quarterback. He's this generation's Tom Brady, Stephen. He's a guy that you don't want to bet against. He's a guy that Mahomes, he has shown, even when he's not having a great day, he'll find a way to win. Did he have a great day yesterday? No. He threw like I think his ending numbers were like 215 yards, Stephen, but he didn't have to put everything on his back like he has this season. He has a running attack. This year he has a great defense. He doesn't have to do that. So he doesn't have to be the MVP of his team. And I don't think he is the MVP of his team, to be honest with you. So I think that Brock Purdy, he has a lot to prove, but I think that he is getting there. And he has shown to me, especially in the last 2 weeks, that he can bring a team back from the depths of despair and bring a team back to win. And if he does that against Kansas City, his reputation goes up, and that game manager label goes away.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting challenge. The 49ers game plan the last couple of last two games in the playoffs are somewhat, questionable. They really have to lean on, Christian McCaffrey a lot more. I think when they started to run the ball, a couple with the Lions, questionable, if not boneheaded decisions on fourth down, really completely changed the game and the momentum. So, hopefully, Kyle Shanahan probably remembered that experience from 4 years ago and is a much better head coach from that 4 years ago. We all know that he's the guy that was involved in the 28-3 debacle when he was an OC with the Falcons when they blew that lead against New England. So there are a lot of stigmas that are being placed against Kyle Shanahan, fair or not. So this is his opportunity, and he's going to make sure he better make sure that he has a much better offensive plan in place for the 49ers to succeed, and also give Brock Purdy the opportunity to succeed, because going up straight up against Patrick Mahomes isn't going to get the job done. So, we have two weeks of interesting time and conversations to discuss, and we'll definitely keep an eye out on the Super Bowl moving forward. All right, Ken, let's wrap up the show tonight with very, very horrific news. WWE chairman Vince McMahon resigned. This is his second time he resigned amidst another sexual assault allegation. This is probably not a sexual assault, but this is a sexual assault or trafficking assault allegations against him that was laid out on him. It's going to be very, very interesting. Well, it's a foregone conclusion. This is a man that's always been, how do I say, always gotten his way in the industry. He's been hit with the massive allegations of, back in the late 80s, early 90s with the steroids. And he remained unscathed throughout his tenure. He enjoyed the resurgence of WWF and then WWE back in the late 90s, when the company was competing against WCW, and the company and the promotion was basically dead in the water for the last couple of years, while WCW, using Ted Turner's money, continued to lure top wrestlers before they self-destructed. But this time though, Vince McMahon got what he deserved, and there's no more returning from this. And I think we may have seen, thank God, hopefully, the last time that we'll ever see Vince McMahon appear in any shape or form on television.
Well, we've seen how he likes to intimidate people. If you remember, when he was doing a show with Bob Costas, when Costas tried to talk to him, he tried to yell at Costas and intimidate him, and Costas, instead of doing that, came forward. Second, Stephen, he also did an interview with Real Sports with Armin Katayan. And here's a guy that, again, tried to intimidate Katayan about some of the things that have been going with wrestlers who had been committing suicide, and also with depression. Up until that time, McMahon was not very sympathetic to him or anybody. So I don't when the allegations first surfaced a couple of years ago, as you mentioned, he did resign as the leader and CEO of WWE, and it was run, as you can mention, scroll down a little bit there, Paul Levesque and his wife Stephanie McMahon took over and running this company, and actually ran it very well. And then when WWE was sold to
TKO, I believe.
Yeah, it was sold to TK and became part of a company with TKO along with USC. McMahon came back and muscled his way in, forcing Stephanie his own daughter out. So the whole thing, Stephen, and I'm going to have to say that McMahon is not a very good. He's not a good person. The allegations that are in the lawsuit, if you read it, it was in the Wall Street Journal, and also the lawsuit entails some of the text that he made. He basically humiliated the woman who was suing him. He, had her perform all types of sexual acts and passed her naked picture around, further humiliating her. I just think, Stephen, that we're not going to be seeing, as you mentioned, we're not going to see Vince McMahon. He said he's going to clear his name once and for all. I don't know if he can. As you mentioned, there's no coming back from this. He has a bad reputation. WWE, signed a huge contract with Netflix to put Raw on its service starting in 2025. In the meantime, USA Network is going to air it. And to be honest with you, right now, WWE is a little bit tainted here. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
I don't know how exactly they. I know TKO is going to do all it can to recover from this. And as you see the article from Awful Announcing that we had over the weekend, Triple H, after the pay-per-view, that the Royal Rumble that they had that was shown on Peacock this weekend.
Yeah.
LeVake,
Paul Levesque, which is formerly of Triple H, the
So LeVake
superstar that is currently married to the one Stephanie McMahon.
Yeah. And he was asked about it, and he just said, "I just wanted to focus on the positive." You can at least in the questions that came out, and I give credit to the reporters, and I give also credit to WWE for showing this press conference. They easily could have not have. They have a tradition of showing the press conference after the pay-per-views. After the Rumble, 3 reporters came in and continued to ask. They also they asked questions of a couple of wrestlers too about what they thought about it. But LeVake said, "I just want to focus on the positive. I don't want to talk about it." Well,
it's not a good look by him either.
No, you can say, "Hey, look, I've heard about the allegations. I will discuss it at another time, but I acknowledge what happened, and we're trying to move forward." You could say that. Say something like that instead of saying, I want to focus on the positive. LeVake is a very media savvy person. He's been a wrestler before. He knows that the media is going to be interested about this, and he chose a tack that really was tone deaf, Steven. So for the WWE, they're going to have to move forward. And as I mentioned, they've been tainted by this. If I'm a media company, a media partner, I think twice about trying to do business with the WWE, at least at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, the whole thing. The UFC led TKO Group. Well, TKO Group is a parent company of UFC, which bought the WWE, and we all know that Dana White is as controversial of a figure, maybe not in the level of Vince McMahon, but he is a controversial figure on his own right as well. And the fact that they even brought back Vince McMahon, who resigned after the hush money scandal, obviously for sexual allegations, and but now this one, he is actually being targeted for sex trafficking involving him, a former WWE wrestler / executive, John Laurinaitis, who's had a lot of problems on his own. He has a son who's was a terrific linebacker at Ohio State, and now at the Notre Dame head coach. Before that, he was a talk show with Columbus radio station in the mornings. His father was a animal warrior of the Road Warriors. Also wrestled as a Legion of Doom in WWF back in the day. So, it's a very, very difficult position for a lot of the people. You have Brock Lesnar, who was was one of the wrestlers, unfortunately being allegedly involved in this latest scandal. Brock Lesnar was not in the Royal Rumble last week, and he probably might not wrestle for quite some time until this allegation is completely cleared. Levesque himself, being a son-in-law to, Vince McMahon, I wouldn't be shocked if, this woman decides to file a lawsuit against the WWE and, the whole WWE, Triple H, and anybody who is involved in this. People like Bruce Pritchard, a longtime executive, and also somebody with a questionable character of his own as well. And Ronda Rousey over the weekend went on Twitter to accuse Pritchard of being literally a mouth for Vince McMahon. So it's going to be very, very interesting how this plays out. WWE has been on the resurgence in recent months. Ever since Vince McMahon, it was no longer in the creative side. They have been doing very, very well. There a lot of the wrestlers were starting to emerge. The Roman Reigns is still a champion, and unfortunately, he is still after this past weekend, and he's been champion for almost more closing in on well past 3 years, and it may be becoming a little bit stale. So we'll see what happens with the WrestleMania in a few months around the corner, and if this allegation is still somewhat hanging over the WWE universe and the wrestlers who have to deal with the the consequences and unwanted attentions. Are we going to hear more stories of sexual trafficking involving different wrestlers? Maybe we might hear something like Hulk Hogan getting involved in this. Hogan is a person who's doesn't have a stellar reputation of his own as well. So if WWE might switch up and crown a new champion as a way to kind of divert the attention as well. Obviously Paul Levesque failed miserably, I think, in this press conference, unfortunately. Will he be a subject of a lawsuit himself too down the road? It's going to be a very, very interesting time, but it's going to be it's officially over for Vince McMahon, and he's going to have to live in infamy. He can fight his own lawsuits, all he wants. Certainly, we're going to hear more about it as he continues to fight using his own resources. So it's going to be a very interesting time for WWE and Vince McMahon, Ken.
Yeah, it definitely is, Stephen. And he's a guy that he didn't have the best of reputations to begin with going in here, and he's basically sunk himself. And as the lawsuit continues, we're going to probably hear more allegations come out, and more women are probably going to come forward. So it's guilt by association here with the WWE. They have to clean house. They basically have to clean everybody who was associated with McMahon in order for them to really move forward here and become a company that is has a better reputation. But it's something we'll have to wait and see, and that's something we'll be covering in the upcoming weeks and months.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up tonight's show. Please make sure to follow us on X, formerly of Twitter, and also our YouTube channel. We're live streaming on the YouTube channel as well. You can follow our Twitter handles. That is strolling at the bottom. Ken can be found on @FangsBites, and he is the associate editor of Sports Blog, Awful Announcing. I can be found on Twitter at Asian Sports Fan 1, as you can see on the Twitter handle at the bottom. Actually, also on my banner as well. So I also write for the Bear Goggles On, which can be found at the bottom, the Twitter handle. I write for the Bears website, for the part of the Fansided network as well. So I look forward to having you again next week to discuss more interesting news. We're going to learn more about the more coaching hires. Maybe 2 coaches will finally be hired, and all the coaching staff, all the coaching hires will be done. We might hear more news about the Super Bowl, etc. So, Ken, thanks for your time tonight, and I look forward to having another interesting conversations next Monday night.
Absolutely. And next week we'll give our Super Bowl predictions. We'll let you know who we think is going to win. And also, as you mentioned, it's going to be a quiet week. We'll have the Pro Bowl games on. We'll
Right.
also have, also believe the NHL All-Star game is next week as well. So I'll be in Canada for visit next weekend. So I'll be in Montreal to see how things are up there. It's my first visit to Canada since I moved away when I left there when I was 7 years old. So the city has changed quite a bit since I was there. So seeing it. In the meantime, enjoy your week in sport, and Stephen and I will see you again here next week. As I mentioned, we'll be back here probably next Monday, and you can find us here right on Twitter, X, and on YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks for joining us, folks, and thanks for also sending out some comments, and hopefully you'll join us next week on our show once again. Good night, everybody.